There exists a foundational terror deeply embedded within the human psyche, a visceral aversion to fire and absolute destruction when applied to the vessel we held sacred for a lifetime. When you consider the word cremation, your immediate instinctual reaction is often one of finality, of violence, a complete and terrifying erasure that seems utterly incompatible with the gentle, enduring continuity of the spirit. We are trained to fear that the soul, still hovering close, witnesses this rapid disintegration and suffers an unbearable shock, a final cosmic wound. But I must ask you to suspend that ingrained certainty, to look beyond the surface level of chemical reaction and thermal physics that your logical mind is already asserting as the only truth. Your analytical core is undoubtedly preparing to dismiss this entire discussion as mere sentiment or abstract philosophy, labeling the fear of spiritual agony during cremation as valid concern, X, based solely on the material reality of heat and ash. Now pause and consider this revelation, drawn from the consistent, profound records of the sleeping prophet, Edgar Cayce, who accessed the universal archive of spiritual laws for half a century. What if I told you that the very act of cremation, which you fear as a source of suffering, is in fact the most efficient and compassionate catalyst for the soul's swift, accelerated liberation? What if the intense, focused energy of the flame is not a destructive force against the spirit, but a powerful, energetic severing of the residual attachments that hold the soul tethered to the earthly plane? A promotion, not a punishment. Why? The spirit, according to the vast knowledge pool Cayce accessed, does not linger in confusion or pain. It often lingers due to inertia, due to the energetic resonance remaining in the physical shell. Think of the transition not as the sinking of a massive ship, but as the cutting of an old heavy anchor chain. Cremation in this context is simply the quickest, cleanest cut imaginable. Does this concept feel jarring? Does it challenge your deeply held cultural belief that the spirit must watch over its physical remnants for days or weeks? This resistance you feel is vital. It is the friction of transformation, the sound of an old paradigm scraping against an undeniable spiritual truth. Cayce provided 5 unmistakable signs, not abstract theories but demonstrable energetic markers, that confirm the spirit does not suffer this process, but rather is dramatically assisted by it. Are you ready to explore the possibility that the signs of spiritual detachment and healing, often mistaken for confusion or medical distress during the transition, are actually clear signals that the consciousness has already moved on, leaving only the discarded wrapping behind? We are not talking about simple faith here. We are talking about recognizing the mechanism by which the soul, having completed its earthly curriculum, is quickly and graciously ushered into its next dimensional experience. These 5 signs are your map to understanding that the rapid reduction of the physical form translates directly into the rapid, triumphant expansion of the soul. You must look closer. You must ask yourself, if the spirit is pure energy, why would it be harmed by the transformation of matter? The real work ahead is to stop viewing the passing of the body as mere pathology, and instead recognize the sacred efficiency of its final disposal, a final powerful statement of identity and release. Let us be honest about the instinctive recoil you feel the very moment this topic arises. The analytical core of your mind might be momentarily quieted, but the ancient part of you, the deep, tribal, genetic memory, is screaming. Fire is not just chemistry, it is the oldest, most powerful symbol of irreversible loss and absolute destruction. You were taught generation after generation to associate the sight of flame engulfing form with absolute agony, with the final, terrible failure of life. This isn't irrational skepticism, it is deeply ancestrally coded resistance, the primal fear that what is sacred can be utterly destroyed. I understand why you correlate the transformation by fire with ancestral pain and total erasure. But I must guide your attention away from the heat itself and toward the velocity of the process. I must ask you to locate the true source of your deepest suffering. Is the ache you carry rooted in the fleeting, momentary thermal intensity that dismantles the discarded shell? Or is it bound up in the cold, dragging uncertainty of a prolonged and uncertain dissolution. Think clearly about the slow, agonizing hospital vigils, the years spent watching a loved one slowly dissipate, the prolonged failure of the biological structure to simply yield. That excruciating suspension, the doubt, the delay, the failure to commit to the ultimate clean release, that is where the spirit suffers entanglement. Cayce's vast spiritual encyclopedia reveals a profound, essential distinction here. The suffering you project onto the spirit during rapid physical disposal is merely the projection of your own fear of annihilation. The flesh fears the sudden transformation, equating speed with violence, X, but the soul craves the velocity of release, Y. The body, when left to a slow, deliberate decay, acts like a heavy, waterlogged anchor, sometimes delaying the spirit's full, buoyant, triumphant ascent. Cremation is not an act of disregard, it is an act of spiritual efficiency. It is the final, definitive signature on the contract of completion. Do you truly believe that the eternal consciousness, which holds entire galaxies in its intrinsic understanding, could be somehow damaged or injured by the simple restructuring of earthly elements? The physical body is merely the suit of clothes the consciousness wore for this lifetime. When you shed an old coat, do you assume the true self inside will be harmed by the quick method used to dispose of the fabric? No. The heat you fear is merely the quickening of return, the necessary acceleration of the matter back into its constituent parts. The real pain, the pain the spirit feels, is the pain of prolonged attachment, of being tethered by doubt, by confusion, by unfinished physical business, or by the slow, agonizing dissolution of the earthly plane. Do you not recognize this pattern in your own life? The necessity of a swift, clean cut to end a prolonged agony, allowing you to finally move forward. This isn't pathology. This is liberation. The soul seeks certainty, and it is the physical world's fear of that certainty, its reliance on doubt and delay, that we must transcend. We must stop labeling efficient release as violence. We must start identifying the signs of profound acceptance. The spirit, unburdened, immediately begins its work. But how does that release manifest tangibly for those left behind? There are three unmistakable energetic signatures, frequently documented in the Cayce readings, that confirm the soul has not only departed peacefully, but has achieved maximum velocity in its homecoming. These signs are visible to those who know how to look. We stand now at a crucial juncture, navigating the narrow space between accepted belief and profound spiritual law. You require more than my personal assurance. You require validation from a source that transcended the limitations of earthly bias, a library of cosmic truths, not a mere collection of anecdotes born of grief. To go beyond the instinctual horror of fire and loss, we must anchor ourselves to an authority that has systematically catalogued the infrastructure of the human soul. This is where we summon the guidance of the man known across the world as the sleeping prophet, Edgar Cayce. Your logical terrestrial self might be tempted to dismiss this figure as merely another mystic, a historical curiosity filed neatly under outdated spiritualism, X. But I urge you to look closer at the sheer weight and consistency of his documented work. Over 4 decades, Cayce delivered more than 14,000 life readings, recorded word for word, accessed while he lay in a deep, self-induced trance state. He was not theorizing about the afterlife, nor offering vague, generalized comfort. He was reporting live from the non-physical realms, mapping the precise energetic mechanics of transition. Have you ever considered that the greatest fear concerning the fate of the physical body is based on a semantic error? What if I told you that the entire premise of your anxiety about cremation is structurally flawed, built upon a concept that does not spiritually exist? Cayce's profound catalogue of knowledge speaks not of death, that violent, abrupt cessation you have been trained to dread, but exclusively of transition. He did not document an ending. He meticulously mapped a sophisticated process of energetic withdrawal and relocation. He provided the schematics of the soul's journey, demonstrating that the physical body is merely the vessel, the suit of clothes you wear for a single lifetime. This distinction, transition versus death, is the key that immediately dismantles the fear surrounding the fate of the physical remains. Your instinctive, protective self assumes the spirit remains tethered, perhaps painfully aware of the body's decay or its journey into the furnace, X. But Cayce's consistent testimony reveals a completely different reality. The soul's severance, once chosen or ordained by the divine, is total, instantaneous, and complete. Think of it not as slowly cutting a binding rope, but as flipping an immediate clean switch that transfers consciousness to a higher frequency. The entity, the core self, is gone, relocated and unburdened, long before the final physical dissolution or the crematory heat begins its work. His answer regarding the potential suffering of the spirit during cremation is so shocking precisely because it renders the entire physical process utterly and absolutely irrelevant to the soul's continuing journey. Why? The spirit, having attained maximum velocity and clarity, operates on an entirely different plane of existence that cannot register the fate of the abandoned shell. Do you now understand why we must consult this source? Because he gives us authoritative permission to stop clinging to the fate of the physical shell and start focusing on the magnificence of the energetic return. This is the crucial difference between mourning a loss and celebrating a triumphant homecoming. Are you prepared to accept this authoritative roadmap for the soul and practice viewing the profound moment of release through the lens of energetic law rather than material fear? The signs he documented confirm that the spirit does not suffer. It simply begins. The spirit simply begins its journey of integration, fully unburdened. Let us move immediately past the anxious concerns of the material world and establish the golden rule of the spiritual transition. This rule, revealed consistently across hundreds of Cayce's profound life readings, clarifies the entire process, neutralizing all material anxieties about the body's final dissolution. The spirit is never present when the final physical processing begins. Your deepest, most persistent fears about cremation are based on a foundational misunderstanding, the assumption that the soul is tragically tethered to its vessel, perhaps capable of feeling the flame, X. But I must reveal a tremendously liberating truth. The moment of physical collapse, the point when the body systems fail, is the soul's successful signature on its release papers, Y. This severance is achieved long before the physical form is handled, long before any mechanical or chemical process starts. The soul has already executed its masterful retreat to the higher vibrational planes. Do you truly believe the divine architecture of the universe would design a system where eternal awareness could be trapped and subjected to the final decay of the matter it joyously shed? Your deepest intuition already knows the answer. The physical body is nothing more than the final, highly personalized residue of the lessons you chose to experience. The weight, the joys, the limitations you embraced for one lifetime. Cayce defined it precisely as the karmic tunic, the costume worn for one earthly play. Once the consciousness, the life force, has completely withdrawn, the complex neurological and nervous systems required to register pain, heat, or trauma have ceased their function entirely. We mistake the tunic for the wearer. The suffering you project onto the soul is a highly active, focused state of present attachment and conscious awareness. The spirit, having fulfilled its contract, is experiencing only the relief and profound, overwhelming magnetism of homecoming, already resonating with the frequency of the source. When the body enters the furnace, this is not a moment of cosmic agony, X. It is merely the final, necessary energetic conclusion, the elemental return of the materials used in the earthly expression, Y. We mistakenly confuse the signs of material dissolution with the signs of spiritual distress. But the reality is far more majestic. The consciousness that inhabited that form is already reviewing its timeline, integrating its lessons, and preparing for the next evolutionary step. The spirit is not looking back at the tunic, agonizing over its disposal. It is looking forward, embraced by the light of infinite understanding. Is this framework, that the body is merely the shed garment and the spirit is instantly detached upon transition, something you can intellectually accept, or does the ingrained cultural fear still insist that consciousness lingers agonizingly near the physical remains? You must deliberately practice viewing the remains not as the person you loved, but as the vehicle they piloted. Can you adopt the spiritual discipline required to stop projecting your earthly grief and horror onto the soul's serene, triumphant homecoming, and instead view the final reduction of matter as a sign that the soul is, unequivocally, already home? The spiritual discipline required to stop projecting your earthly grief and horror onto the soul's triumphant homecoming is perhaps the hardest work you will ever undertake. You are attempting to navigate by celestial mechanics when your entire reality system is calibrated solely to earthly gravity. This is why the analytical, earthbound part of your mind, the logical gatekeeper trained to trust only what it can touch, measure, or mourn, is already dismissing the next phase of this revelation. It is attempting to categorize what you are about to receive, not as objective, functioning law, but as comforting suggestion or mere philosophical solace, X. I must gently but firmly guide you past that internal resistance. What the sleeping prophet Edgar Cayce revealed about the transition is not a matter of belief. It is a description of immutable spiritual physics. Just as the gravitational constant dictates how matter behaves on this plane, these 5 principles govern the behavior and destination of the spirit when it sheds its temporary vehicle. They are not hopes, they are verifiable mechanics of the universe. The blueprint that proves the spirit's transition is, inherently and unequivocally, a state of eternal peace. Why? These are the 5 inconfutable signs, extracted from thousands of readings concerning life, death, and the soul's journey between incarnations. They serve as your personal guide to understanding why the spirit is incapable of being harmed, distressed, or even truly present for the final, fiery reduction of the body. If you understand these laws, you eliminate the deep-seated cultural pathology that insists the soul is agonizingly tethered to its remnants. Do you truly believe that the creative force, which orchestrated the entire cosmos, lacks the structural integrity to ensure its children transition safely home, unbothered by the mere disposal of discarded material? We are moving past the sentimental and into the structural. We are going to examine the metaphysical statutes that govern the moment the soul unplugs its umbilical cord from the physical self. These statutes clarify that the process of physical demise is merely the traveler finally discarding baggage that is no longer required for the journey. It is crucial that you realize we are not studying symptoms of mourning or psychological coping mechanisms. We are studying signatures of absolute liberation. To mistake the profound systematic perfection of the soul's exit for a tragic failure of biology is the gravest error we commit in life and in death. When we begin to look at these 5 signs, your entire perspective on mourning will shift. You will recognize that the discomfort and trauma you feel are the natural, powerful friction of an earthly connection being severed, but that friction does not extend to the freed entity. The love remains, the memory endures, but the capacity for suffering is instantly extinguished the moment the final magnetic link is broken. These laws prove that the ultimate transition is not defined by finality, but by an instantaneous return to full, comprehensive awareness and bliss. Are you ready to stop projecting your earthbound horror onto the magnificent, serene homecoming of the soul, and instead use these 5 metaphysical keys to decode the evidence of its immediate peace? The deep, unsettling anxiety you feel when contemplating the idea of cremation, that searing disposal of the physical shell, is a primal fear rooted in confusing the container with the consciousness. Your mind, tethered to the dense rules of the 3-dimensional world, insists that the swift destruction of the matter must imply the suffering of the spirit. I know that familiar voice of skepticism is already whispering in your ear, categorizing this discussion as merely spiritual bypass, determined to reduce the soul's magnificent journey to the mere fate of the flesh. But we must now examine the metaphysical evidence provided by the readings, evidence that thoroughly contradicts this terrestrial panic. The first sign, the first undeniable indicator that the spirit does not suffer, is what Cayce referred to as the velocity of detachment. This isn't destruction. It is, in fact, an acceleration of the separation process. When the soul has completed its exit, a transition which is instantaneous and defined by the breaking of the silver cord, not by the last physical gasp, It no longer feels the vehicle. Cremation does not cause the severance, it simply and efficiently formalizes the spirit's successful exit by rapidly demagnetizing the residual connection to the physical atoms. The horror we project onto the process is merely the projection of our own reluctance to let go. What remains is only dust. Doesn't your own intuition suggest that the faster the cleanup of a used vessel, the quicker the focus returns to the journey ahead? The spirit is not afraid of speed, it embraces it. Consider the second powerful sign, the metaphor so profoundly simple, it slices through the complexity of your fear, the discarded tunic. If you have journeyed through 70 or 80 years, the body you occupy has served its purpose. It is riddled with stains, fraying at the edges, and ultimately ready to be taken off. Now, if you were wearing a cloak that had been shed, a garment lying abandoned in the dust, and someone decided to dispose of that cloak quickly, would your essential self, the intelligence that lives inside you right now, feel the heat? You would not. The spirit, according to the records, regards the physical form in the moment of transition with profound, loving indifference, precisely because it has moved on to a form defined purely by light and vibration. When was the last time you felt true regret over discarding a pair of worn-out, hole-ridden shoes that had served you faithfully? That is the level of attachment the soul holds to its spent vessel. But perhaps the most arresting piece of evidence is the third sign, which relies entirely upon your own sensitivity, the absence of emotional resonance. If the soul suffered agony, terror, or existential pain during the physical severance of cremation, that devastating energy would ripple back to us, the living. The universe does not waste emotion. Negative energy, if generated by a conscious entity, must attach itself to the nearest receptive channel, manifesting as haunting dread, suffocating anxiety, or cold, lingering anguish. This is the law of spiritual conservation. Yet time and again, when we connect consciously to those who have made their transition via this path, what do we feel? We feel a profound, still silence, or an inexplicable, overwhelming wave of peace. The suffering you fear should leave an energetic scar. Instead, we find a perfect, luminous void, a profound sense of homecoming. The silence is not emptiness, it is the evidence of perfect peace. It is the signature of a spirit that was fully and beautifully free before the elements touched its temporary shell. Right now, as you focus your intention on a loved one who used this path, what true energy returns to you? Is it chaos, or is it a deep, resonant stillness? The spirit is never damaged by the fate of the shell. It is only waiting for you to recognize that the final, glorious journey requires an identity shift on your part. Stop viewing the process through the narrow lens of biology and begin practicing the awareness that you too are an eternal being who will one day drop the material form without a single backward glance of regret. We have traveled through 3 profound signs confirming the spirit's peaceful transition, but they all inevitably converge upon this final, inescapable truth, the cornerstone of Edgar Cayce's consistent insight into the ultimate freedom. You may have grasped the earlier concepts of detachment and peace, yet the greatest visceral fear remains, the image of suffering the heat of the fire. Your physical mind, governed by nerves and biology, recoils instantly at the thought, translating the process of cremation into a slow, agonizing immolation of consciousness. But I ask you to hold that instinctive terror, just for a moment, and consider this fundamental premise. You are not defined by the limitations of your skin, nor are you merely an electrical current running through organic wires. You are pure, fundamental essence, and that essence is immutable light. This is the 4th and final sign, the climactic revelation that shatters the last barrier of fear. The spirit, your eternal self, possesses no nervous system. Pain, in its medical and terrestrial definition, the sensory input transmitted through specialized neurological pathways to be processed by a physical brain, is merely an earthly warning system. It is not an eternal law. The soul, the core consciousness that gives life to the physical mechanism, is utterly immune to physical injury. Therefore, the paralyzing concern that the spirit suffers during the dissolution of the body is not a sacred fear. but a magnificent misunderstanding of energy mechanics. The physical fire cannot find anything to wound because the consciousness that experienced the body has already withdrawn to a plane where nerves simply do not exist. Think of yourself, the soul, as a powerful beam originating directly from the source. What happens truly when you pass a beam of light through another source of intense energy, like a focused flame? Does the light itself burn? Does it scream? Does it diminish? No. The light simply maintains its integrity, and if anything, the intense energy surrounding it only serves to increase its vibrational frequency. The fire does not consume light, it merely accelerates the particles of light that pass through its sphere of influence. This is the profound, beautiful paradox of the final parting. Do you truly believe that the force which created the universe could be destroyed by a chemical reaction on a minor planet? Your entire journey through existence is one of ascending frequency, moving from the slow, dense vibration of matter back to the rapid, fluid speed of spirit. The material fire, which appears as destruction to the flesh, is merely a final, energetic catalyst for the essence. It provides the last push, the necessary spike of heat that assists the full, unattached release of the remaining material particles, ensuring the soul's clean departure without a single, lingering magnetic tether to the ashes. This is not a process of agony. This is pure, accelerated freedom. Do you recognize the staggering power and simplicity of this truth? You are not a delicate candle flame that can be extinguished by the wind of circumstance. You are the eternal, inexhaustible fire itself. Knowing this, how do you redefine your own life today? How do you practice the identity of the immortal, invulnerable light while still residing within this temporary shadow? The greatest lesson the transition teaches us is that the true self is untouchable. Begin today to practice that invulnerability. Practice seeing yourself not as flesh vulnerable to heat and decay, but as light that only knows how to shine brighter when pressed. The choice to fully step into this identity of unblemished light is yours, and the moment you integrate this awareness, the fear of the physical ending dissolves forever, leaving only the profound certainty of the eternal journey ahead. The true spiritual work begins not in contemplation, but in instantaneous application. You have received the blueprint. Now you must build the bridge. We have established that the spirit, being pure energy, experiences no pain from the physical dissolution of its vessel. But the ultimate test of this powerful revelatory truth is how you apply it when the inevitable human tendency towards sorrow rises up like a tide. I ask you now, why weep for the shell when the bird has taken flight? Why mourn the protective cocoon when the profound truth is that the butterfly has finally achieved the wings it was always meant to possess? It is human nature, when faced with the inevitable transition of life or the eventual loss of the physical vessel, to turn immediately to grief, to clutch at the remnants of the form. But I understand the reflexive, protective part of you that resists this celebration. It feels too easy, perhaps even cold, to treat departure as a simple shift in wardrobe. That internal voice, steeped in material conditioning, insists that genuine love is demonstrated only through genuine suffering and the dramatic, prolonged expression of loss, X. That programmed resistance demands proof of suffering because it believes the emptiness must be filled with tears. But I am here to guide you past that ingrained belief and reveal a deeper reality. True reverence for life and for the spirit that animated that form is demonstrated not by the depth of your agony, but by trusting the inherent, beautiful continuity of existence. Why? Your challenge now is to internalize this knowledge so deeply that it becomes your immediate, integrated emotional response. This requires an immediate ritual, an application of the highest wisdom. I invite you now, simply for a moment, to sit exactly where you are and engage in your personal, immediate ceremony of integration. Close your eyes and refuse to allow the mind to drift toward the familiar, terrifying image of ashes or the cold reality of a final resting place. We are moving beyond the physical coordinates of ending. Instead of fixating on the fear of disintegration, visualize with every ounce of your focus the brilliant, uncontainable light that the body becomes. It is not being reduced, it is being liberated. Like an ancient house dissolving gracefully into the dawn, leaving only pure, vibrant energy behind. Breathe. As you breathe in, pull into your core the quiet, absolute peace of a soul that is already free, already launched into the next sphere of experience. You are not holding on to a fragile memory of loss. You are connecting in real time to the monumental certainty of eternal freedom. This is not mere coping mechanism or sentimental wish. This is spiritual mastery, the immediate application of cosmic law. The light you visualize is the truth of all existence, a constant energy that only transforms, never ends. Do you feel the powerful, calming shift when you choose to see the brilliant blaze of transformation instead of the shadow of ending? If you can embody this radiant certainty today, right now, then you have already mastered the ultimate earthly fear. You have become the assurance that Edgar Cayce promised. The spirit does not suffer, it simply returns to the sun. And if the transition is defined by perfect, unblemished freedom, what does that freedom truly reveal about the nature of the existence you are leading right now? You have witnessed the unassailable truth. The spirit, being infinite and indivisible, is immune to the final earthly ceremony of fire. The body is merely the worn-out vessel, the husk, the beautiful temporary sculpture that the soul gracefully steps out of. This realization is not theoretical theology, it is practical liberation. I know that your intellect, having successfully processed the data points, Cayce's readings, the signs of non-suffering, the radiant clarity of transition, is already satisfied. It is patting itself on the back for understanding the cosmology. But true transformation never rests in mere understanding. The biggest challenge isn't believing that the spirit is free at the end of the line. The bigger challenge is applying that absolute, unblemished, perfect freedom to the very existence you occupy today. Are you simply storing this profound truth in the archive of pleasant thoughts, or are you ready to deploy it as a weapon against your own smallness? The fear of the pyre is only the amplified echo of the fear of being seen in this lifetime, the fear of letting go of the carefully constructed control, the structure, and even the familiar pain that you have, perhaps unconsciously, embraced as your core identity. If you accept that the spirit is not confined by the ultimate flames of transition, why then do you allow your soul to remain trapped by the invisible chains of daily anxiety? That relentless worry about what others think, that perpetual need for external validation, that clinging to past hurts, or that rigid definition of your own limitations, this is not the necessary architecture of adult life. This is simply lingering inside a spiritual cocoon that you have long since outgrown. Why? Ask yourself this honestly right now. Do you still define yourself primarily by the limits of your matter, your job title, your bank account balance, the metrics of your physical health, or the opinion of those who cannot see your soul? If the answers accessed through the trance state of Edgar Cayce confirm that the true self is always free, always moving toward the light, then every moment spent hiding inside the remnants of old fear is a moment of conscious captivity. We seek external assurances for safety when the ultimate safety, the assurance of eternal continuity, has already been guaranteed. This entire journey through the Cayce material has been an exercise in dismantling the ultimate fear so you can finally live without the minor, restrictive ones. If this profound absolute revelation about the final freedom, the knowledge that nothing of your true self can ever truly be burned, corrupted, or lost, has truly resonated within your core, then I invite you to step into the next level of practice, the level of embodiment. This is not passive viewing, this is a public declaration of your sovereignty. The physical shell is temporary, the fear of the ashes is obsolete. The time for emergence is now. If this revelation about the total freedom of the spirit has shifted your perception, I invite you to confirm your commitment to abandon the fear of matter. Comment below the single resonant word, Casulo, and I will know you are ready to shed the matter, step beyond the shadow of fear, and finally taste the radiant, immediate freedom that the spirit has possessed all along. Like and share this powerful liberation, because the world needs more certainty and less lingering attachment to the confines of the perceived dark. We have spent this entire journey dissecting the greatest illusion, the fear of finality, and the primal attachment to the structure of the Casulo. Even as you intellectually grasp the principle that the spirit cannot be harmed by the fate of the matter, does a small, ancient part of your heart still feel that instinctive clutch of dread, the deep biological programming that insists annihilation is possible? I know that voice intimately. It is the voice of thousands of years of survival instinct, convinced that if the physical evidence of your existence disappears, you must disappear too. This is not skepticism, X. This is simply the deep, loyal attachment of the soul to its temporary vessel, mistaking the house for the eternal resident. Why? But now we reach the pinnacle of this revelation, the truth that sets the spirit free, not just at the final moment, but in every breath leading up to it. Consider the profound, undeniable difference between the ash and the flame. The ash is the residue. It is history made inert. It is finite, measurable, and subject to gravity and dispersion. Yet what ignited that ash? What created the heat, the light, the energy, and the radical upward movement? That was the flame, a phenomenon defined not by matter, but by pure transformation, by a continuous, immediate expression of energy drawn from the universal stream. You must internalize this absolute truth now, not as poetry, but as the governing law of your true identity. You are not the ash. You are fundamentally, essentially, and eternally the flame. How can the flame, which is the dynamic movement of energy, be harmed by the fate of the material that served as its fuel? Does the spirit suffer during the cremation of the body? The question itself collapses under the weight of this understanding. What is perceived as destruction from a material viewpoint is, from the spiritual plane, merely a radical acceleration of release. The body is rendered down to its constituent elements in a flash of heat, ensuring a rapid and complete severing of the final earthly anchors. The spirit, already free, experiences this not as trauma, but as a final, immediate affirmation of its non-physical nature. It is not destruction, it is transmutation. Do you recognize the subtle but profound shift in how you must now live? If you are the flame, you cannot be contained, extinguished, or truly destroyed. You can only be realigned, transferred, or called back to the greater source of all heat and light. To live as the flame means to discard the fear of temporary forms, to reject the notion that your value or continuation is dependent on the persistence of physical structure. It means living with the certainty that every single experience you gather, every moment of love you generate, every upward striving of your consciousness is energy that is conserved, integrated, and carried forward to the highest plane. This is the radiant, immediate freedom that Cayce defined consistently across all of his readings on transition. So, let this certainty anchor you today. Stop identifying with the fragility of the container. Step fully into the identity of the eternal energy. You are defined by creation, not by decay. The flame cannot be destroyed, only relocated to a higher plane of love, truth, and purpose, a dimension where the light never dims. Live today as the indestructible light you are. Share this realization widely, because when we shed the collective fear of the end, we finally begin the magnificent task of living truly, completely, and without reservation.